I decided to write the book because I think people sometimes don't understand that participating in change is something that anybody in the world can do. It's not for special people or important people. It's simply having a passion that you care about, finding other people who share the passion, and working together with a vision for change. It's not magic. I don't believe in coincidence. I think things happen for reasons. I think if we're open to possibilities, then we respond in different ways. If that's being done too, maybe. I have never thought about it that way. And since I don't believe in God, I have a hard time wrapping my head around it, to be honest. I don't think that, I think we could all guess the causes, you know. It's partly, it is ingrained sexism globally. You know, it's a term I despise, but the patriarchal structures that, you know, believe that only men have the right to power and that women are at best the mother of your children, you know, and at worst not even worthy of anything. And then when you layer on top of that societies in conflict, and by conflict I mean it can be socioeconomic conflict, it can be the drug war kind of conflict, it doesn't have to be, you know, war and armed conflict. When you add that to the equation, the women being the weakest link, so to speak, are the ones who are targeted. And since women do try to not fight back, but women, human rights defenders speak out for women. And a lot of the violence is done to them because they do take action. A lot of the violence is done to women's organizations in all of Central America because they dare to take action. I think it's also, as I said, just magnified by the machismo and the really ingrained sexism. Do you mean the successes of the 80s? Oh my goodness. I became involved in trying to stop U.S. military intervention in Central America in the 80s. I wish I could say that we were tremendously successful, that we stopped U.S. intervention, but we didn't. The U.S. got bored with intervening in Central America once the Soviet Union collapsed, and then kind of, you know, pushed forward so-called peace agreements so they could turn their attention to dominating the entire world instead of just Central America, which historically they've done, as we all know. You know, if they feel like their backyard is being rebellious or, you know, trying to actually guide its own future, then they tend to pay attention to Central America and Latin America, but not generally. We did do a few things that were really good in spite of not stopping the U.S. I created a project that brought wounded children from El Salvador to the U.S. For medical treatment, and there were 20 hospitals that donated care across the country. But it was more than a humanitarian medical relief effort. It was also a way to educate U.S. citizens about the war in El Salvador, about what was being done with our tax dollars. A parent or a guardian of each child would come with the child, and they would be housed by someone in the solidarity community generally. And then they would meet with church groups. We had one guy who met with the local Rotary Club, and they explained the war and what was happening and why they had to come to the U.S. And that was a fabulous project. It didn't stop the wars, but it did make an impact, I think, in other ways. And currently, the Nobel Women's Initiative partners with organizations around the world, and one of our strongest partners is JAZ, which is Just Associates, Jazz Mesoamerica. We've partnered with them for years. And part of our work on the femicide in Mexico, Honduras, and Guatemala was in cooperation with Jazz, leading a delegation to the region. And we continue to partner with them on specific projects and issues where our participation helps the work they're doing. That's the whole point of the Nobel Women's Initiative, is trying to use the influence and access that we have to shine a spotlight on the work of women in their own region, not going there and creating a project for them or telling them what to do. Women know what they need. They don't need to be told. But sometimes if we're there, the press pays attention, or, you know, we can get meetings that they would never have, and they come and we say, thank you for the meeting, and then the women themselves speak about the problem, not us talking on their behalf, which I find repulsive, by the way. When, you know, the North speaks on behalf of other people when the other people are sitting right there. I mean, I do have colleagues who are incredible organizers, but I have seen them sit there, and somebody asks a question about Honduras, and there'll be a Honduran woman or two beside them, and the white woman will answer. And it just blows me away. That's not what we're about at Nobel Women's Initiative. Just because I care. You know, how does anybody feel passionate about something? My passion about U.S. foreign policy and war was initially sparked by Vietnam. You know, I was at university during the Vietnam War, and it's not like U.S. wars today where you see it on television. You know, Vietnam was on the television every night. You saw the soldiers, you know, slogging through the jungle, and you saw them coming home in body bags. And, you know, everybody's son, unless you were a Bush or somebody like that, everybody's son was at risk of being drafted. And that made for a national discussion about the war. And it shattered my understanding, or the mythology of the U.S. that I had accepted, like every young person. You know, you go to school, you're taught history of the U.S. and how marvelous it is. And, you know, there's part of that that's true, but there's a lot of it that is total bullshit, to be quite honest. And it was the Vietnam War that made me see that. And I floundered after graduating from university, like many people. I did a series of useless and irrelevant jobs because I was trying to find my path to find a way to consistently do something to address U.S. foreign policy. And that happened when I got a leaflet in 1981 about the war in Vietnam. I mean, comparing the war in El Salvador to Vietnam. And I went to a meeting where they talked about what was being done in our name with our tax dollars. And that was it. Changed my life forever. And 32 years later, I'm still a grassroots activist. I guess I'm privileged to work in a global network of people who do care. I obviously come in contact with those who don't. I sometimes will talk with them. Sometimes I don't bother, to be quite honest. But the kinds of work I do involve, you know, global networks of activists and working with governments who do care. To push governments who don't care to do the right thing. So I'm not confronted with it the same way people are. And even back in the day when I started, I didn't care. I believe in what I do, and if somebody doesn't like my opinion, I do not care. I don't care if people like me or not. My life is not a popularity contest. I do what I do because I profoundly believe in the need for social justice in the world, period. I believe peace is possible. Sustainable peace is fundamental in this teeny world, or we will extinct ourselves, which we will be the only animal in about 8 major extinctions on our planet that offs itself. But I believe change is possible. I've been part of change. I know it works. And of course I get burned out sometimes. I've been burned out. One time I tried to get a straight job. That didn't work very well. And I don't know, even now, at the end of long trips, I'll get on an airplane and think, what the hell am I doing? Seriously, pretty much every time. When I was flying back from Italy, I thought, oh my God, why am I doing this? And it was a fabulous trip. I mean, in terms of meeting the foreign minister and, you know, all of the yada-das you want to meet to talk policy that, you know, my organizations are working on. So it was fabulous, but I still get on the plane and I think, this is ridiculous, you know? Why can't I just go live in Vermont and forget about all this, you know? Yeah, I mean, for those who do read the book, they'll find out pretty quickly that I'm very straightforward about my strengths and weaknesses. You know, I make no attempt to pretend that with the Nobel Peace Prize I suddenly became Mother Teresa. I'm a normal human being. I sometimes have a terrible temper. Sometimes I swear like a stevedore. I'm not always gracious and elegant, and some would say I never am. But I have a profound distaste of the deification of people who contribute to change. I use the example of Martin Luther King, not because I think he was marvelous and his work was recognized with the Peace Prize, rightfully so, but by glorifying Martin, somehow we have lost touch with the thousands and millions of people in the United States that have worked and still work to end racism in this country. I think that's horrifying. Not that he shouldn't be, you know, recognized as a fabulous leader, but what about everybody else? When we suddenly just have Martin the Monument, and Martin, you know, he weren't perfect, let's put it that way. I won't go into his weaknesses, they're well known. But I don't want people to ever put me on a pedestal. I don't ever want to be a monument anywhere. I want people to understand that if you want to change the world, just get up off your ass, join with people who share the same vision that you do, and do it. It's not magic. But talking with your friends about problems is not a strategy for change. If you don't take action, you know, you will not contribute to change. And so my view is just save your energy. You know, don't just whine about the problems of the world that need to be changed. If you're not going to do something, don't waste your energy. Watch a football match or whatever you like to do. Go shopping, I don't care what it is. But just talking with your friends is a way to pat yourself on the back and pretend that you're more sensitive than other people because you do understand the problems. It doesn't matter if you understand them if you don't do anything about them. And I want people to understand that if I did it, they can too. I came from nothing. My family lived on the ragged edges of the middle class, to put it nicely. We had quite a bit of violence in my home because of my deaf, paranoid, schizophrenic brother. I myself was sexually assaulted by a member of the Salvadoran death squads, trained by the United States of America, God bless the USA. You know, so I've been through stuff, but I am not the stuff, you know what I mean? The assaulter is the person with the problem, not the person who was assaulted. It's just made me more fierce than I was before, and I'm pretty fierce. If you meet my colleagues in the Nobel Women's Initiative, you will find that every one of them is fierce. even smiling Mairead Maguire, I don't know if you've ever met her, from Northern Ireland, she has this beatific, grin on her face. She is made of steel, and I swear you would never want to cross Mairead Maguire, even though she smiles like a saint in a painting in Italy, All of the women are tough. You have to be.